Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week we're going to be talking about nutritional labels. Food labels seem to cause a lot of confusion with all their daily reference intakes and their percentage sign and their little asterisk signs alerting us to different things, traffic light boxes alerting us to whether things are high, low, moderate in certain food groups, and salt and sugar and blah. I thought I'd put a little series together explaining everything that features on nutritional labels that affect us and just making it clearer and easy to navigate. So there is quite a lot to cover, so I thought I would break this down into a perhaps 2 or 3 video part series, just so they are simpler, more shorter bite-sized videos, and hopefully they'll build on from one another. I'll certainly keep on making them until such a time that you feel utterly confident navigating a food label. Now, from my understanding, nutritional laws change from country to country, and what needs to appear on the labels legally change from country to country. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to be discussing British law and British food labelling, but if there's any crossover that I think is relevant to the United States, because I've got a couple of people who do follow me from the United States, then I will make reference to those rules as well, but I'll let you know as I go. So today, let's just talk about the more directly impactful information based on government guidelines. Let's get into the video. So you will see all over food labels percentage signs, reference daily intake, as well as what I call the traffic light box, which features on the front of packaging. Before we can really understand these alerts and these percentages, we really need to get a good understanding of the government guidelines, because this is what all the food packaging and all the alerts are referring to. We have standard government recommendations for salt, as well as overall fats, proteins, carbohydrates, including sugar and fibre. Fat, they do break down into saturated fat and polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fats, and also carbohydrates, which they break into what they call free sugars and fibre. Now, proteins, fats and carbs are the macronutrients, and the macronutrients are where our calories are in the diet. By estimating in grams how much we need of each macronutrient gives us an overall caloric load. There is of course government guidelines for micronutrition, so that's things like your vitamins and your minerals, but we're not going to look at that today. I might do that in another video at a later date, but today we're just looking at the things that directly impact our energy needs, so that is the macronutrient, and also looking at things like salts and fibres and sugars. These recommendations and guidelines change dependent on our sex and which age group we fall into. This typically is what it looks like. This one's based on group ages 19 to 64 years old, as I presume that actually the majority of my client base and you watching fall into this category. You can go to www.gov. I'll just put the link in there actually because I've forgotten it. You can go through there if you're not within this age group and you would like to have a look at your own. You can also get advice from the Eat Well guide. Not necessary to know your category in order to decipher information on nutritional packages. It's more just if you want to have a look. Right, so one of the questions you might be asking is, Sifi, if our nutritional needs vary by any degree between age groups and between the sexes, then what on earth is being referenced on nutritional packages? And you'd be asking a very good question. They've rounded it up and they have estimated. They really can't put specific recommendations for each age and each sex, because our food labels would be even more overwhelming than what they already are. So what they've done is they have estimated the needs for the nation based on a woman, an average size woman of average activity levels. Broken down, it looks a bit like this. I'll put it on the screen so you can have a look.
Our overall energy intake, or rather what we refer to as being our calories, is 2,000 calories per day. Remember, calories are found in the macronutrients, proteins, carbs and fats. It's recommended that we don't consume any more than 70 grams of total fat. This includes saturated fats as well as polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, which are more commonly described as being our good fats. They have a more specific recommendation for saturated fats, and it's recommended that we don't consume any more than 20 grams per day. It's suggested that we have at least 260 grams per day of carbohydrates, and a component of carbohydrates is sugar. The recommendation is that we do not consume more than 90 grams of total sugar. So this is all sugars, which is inclusive of added sugar and sugars that are found naturally occurring from things like milk products and things like fruits and vegetables. Protein they recommend at 50 grams per day, and salt they suggest no more than 6 grams per day. So all the percentages you see on food packages is in reference to this government guideline. You will also notice that they are making their references based on grams, so we will be covering this in some detail in both this video and in much more detail in a later video.
Now, it is worth noting that these are a good guideline, and I think we do need guidelines, but they are a bit vague. It's very hard for the government to be generically specific. It's not really a thing. We come in all different shapes and sizes, all different activity levels and all different lifestyles. It's also worth noting that all recommendations are based on minimal requirements. So remember, when we're looking at food labels, we're looking at the minimal requirements for an average size female of average activity. Take that as you will in any way. They cannot take into consideration an individual's basal metabolic rate, meaning how many calories they need to maintain their weight as it is. They also don't look at their energy output, so the thermic effect of exercise, and also your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically your NEAT, how much you're moving and active within your lifestyle. If you are working with me, or indeed any good coach, we have ways of working out more specific, tailored requirements for our clients when it comes to a positive macronutrient breakdown and caloric load, and also looking at things like fibre and salts and stuff like that. For many of my clients, looking at the percentages and the recommendations on food labelling isn't any longer particularly relevant, but I do think it's very important to get a good idea of what the government guidelines are for the specific things that come up in the traffic light boxes. So things like the overall sugar, the saturated fats, the salts, the fibre. I think it's really good for us to actually look at that. And often I do get asked, well, Sifi, how do I know if a food is high in saturated fat? How do I know if a food is high in sugar? That's what we're going to look at now. And I'm going to use a really crass visual of a bowl of rice. This is 100 grams of rice weighed out. Please note it's just rice because it was easier and it was better than sugar. I didn't want to use sugar because that would just send people off in the whole we're using rice, but this could be 100 grams of chicken, beef, broccoli, flour, chili con carne, whatever. And most of the time on food labels, they measure everything in serving sizes or in 100 gram sizes. And the recommendations we're about to talk about is looking at per 100 grams of a food product. So the first thing we're going to look at is overall fats. In a 100 gram item of food, if 17.5 grams or over, it would be deemed as a product high in fat. If this was 3 grams or lower of total fats, then it would be deemed as being a low in fat product. I was saying before, we look more closely at saturated fats, which I want to add. Saturated fats are important, they're a healthy component of your diet. It's just we need it in lesser quantities than polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, which are deemed as our healthy fats. That's what tends to be alerted on the food labelling. So, of saturated fats, if this product had 5 grams of saturated fats and over, then it would be deemed as being high in saturated fats. On the other hand, if it had 1.5 grams or lower of saturated fat, then it would be looked at as being a low in saturated fat food item. Let's move on to sugar. So how would I know if this product was high in sugar? Please note we are talking about overall sugars. We are not talking about added sugar, refined sugar, the sugar that's on the table. I am going to be doing a separate video at a later date based on sugar because I think that is the component of food that really has people really the most confused. So I will be looking at that, but we're talking about overall sugars. So this is sugars from naturally occurring fruits and vegetables and milk products, as well as added sugar, so things like cane sugar and stuff that we use to sweeten our foods and put in cakes and all that delicious stuff. Anything that's over 22.5 grams per 100 grams would be deemed as being high in sugar. Anything of 5 grams or less than of this 100 grams would be deemed as being low in sugar. So if you below in the description box all these details that we've just talked about, but also I'll put links to the government website so you can actually have a look and just check for yourself. It's really important that we leave it here for this week because, as you know, it could go on and on. I could carry on and on, but we do want to make this quite simple and quite easy to digest. If you can get your head around what we've discussed today, when we look at actual nutritional labels next week, by like literally looking at the packet, if you can get your head around this stuff, you'll be able to understand it a lot easier, and that video should be a lot shorter. We'll also look at the ingredients box and look at common ingredients and what has to appear in ingredients boxes. Right, I think that's everything for today. I appreciate this video is probably going to be a little bit longer, but this stuff is really important. It's about what we put in our bodies, so let's take the time to actually get our heads around it, and once you do, you'll find everything so much more simple to look through. I'm also always open for comments, suggestions for video ideas. I am trying to create a channel that is for you, that is clearing up any confusion about health, fitness, nutrition, making sure that you are getting the pathway and the guidance you need into living a healthier, more active, positive lifestyle. Anything that supports you with that. If you did like this video and you liked its content, please do shoot me a couple of thumbs up. It really does help my channel to grow. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, I would love for you to come and join my small growing community here over on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram as well, where I post things every single day about health, fitness and family life. And until then, I'll see you next week. Have a lovely week, guys.